Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Thank you for joining us on this show that celebrates Mississippi and all the people who are working so hard to make it a great place to live, work, and play. And the first half of the show, as we normally do on Fridays, we'll have Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Second half of the show, JT Mitchell, the news director for SuperTalk Mississippi News, is going to be joining us. By the way, for this Facebook and YouTube and SuperTalk TV audience, the background you see is one I had a long time ago. I was having some issues with the bar that holds the setup and did some fixing and thought we'd just kind of pull that out and change the background a bit. Got a new chair, and my wife was on me about the chair. It was way too soft, and I've been sitting in it now for 4 years. It was pretty worn out. So sitting in a new chair. Don't need a bunch of pillows to keep me supported, so that's pretty cool. Feel kind of fresh this morning, and with that said, we'll go over to Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, and first of all, say good morning, and say the Saints kind of feel fresh too. It's going to be interesting, this underestimated team, what happens to them. Well, anyway, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. We got wrapping up the off season. The final portion of off season, Ricky, the mandatory minicamp. So we've had the whole team on the field. It's the first time we've got a chance to kind of see almost everyone that's going to be a part of this team. So it's an exciting time of year over here in New Orleans.
I was joking with Jeff before the show started. First of all, I really encourage you to go to NOLA.com and sign up for the Saints newsletter. I think you'll be glad you did because they've got a great team that's focused on the Saints, and they're covering it from all angles. And, of course, Jeff's an award-winning columnist. And I call him Debbie Downer sometimes, because he writes – he really gets – for those of us who might either be on the train or starting to get on the train about Saints being sort of underestimated this year and beginning to put it together. If they can stay healthy and get their offensive and defensive line going, they've got some playmakers. It'd be fun. But as we're starting to get on this, Jeff writes this great column, and he so understands how we feel. But at the very end, he says, until proven otherwise, count me among the skeptics. Because you can always bank on Jeff. That's where he's going to be. Because you're close to it, Jeff. You see that a lot of pieces of this puzzle have to fall into place. And it is by far not a foregone conclusion that they're going to overachieve this year, is it?
Well, I mean, look, this is the time of year when optimism kind of reigns supreme. I mean, every team in the league feels good about itself. They've had the offseason to correct what they think are problems in the roster or the coaching staff, and the Saints are no different. So this is the time to kind of be hopeful. But, I mean, we were hopeful a year ago, and it didn't play out that well. I mean, I can remember when Derek Carr got signed, everyone was going bonkers about Derek Carr. And then midway through the season, he's being booed off the field at the Superdome, right? So I've seen it before, and I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic for this team. There's a lot of things I like that I'm seeing, but I also know the reality of the rest of the league, and I think perspective is always important. I mean, we tend to look myopically at our team and look at the things here, but it's always good to pull back the lens and look around the league and see that everybody else is kind of in the same boat.
Well, what's interesting about what you wrote is that they're really, Coach Allen is not a rah-rah guy. He just isn't. But he is trying to embody some sort of proven philosophies about focusing on the process and let the chips fall where they may. But it does seem like the team is kind of buying into that, doesn't it?
Yeah, they definitely are. I think he's reached the team in a lot of good ways. I think that mindset that he's kind of fostering is the right mindset for this team, because they have been really hunted in the NFC South for a number of years. I mean, the Saints have been the kingpins, and they've been the team with the great expectations. I mean, everyone picked them to win the division last year. So it's very different for them to come in like a season like now where they're ranked among the bottom teams in the league, and no one's talking about it. There hasn't been a national reporter at Saints practice at all. I mean, they're not on the radar nationally. I mean, their roster's ranked among the worst in the league. Their salary cap situation's among the worst. They're getting older. They're one of the older rosters. So there's a lot of reasons why that is. But internally, as I said, they're optimistic, and there's a growing enthusiasm among the players that, hey, we're being overlooked right now. We're going to sneak up on people. So we're going to see how this plays out. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
As we discussed last week, this week is mandatory, and Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara were among the numbers, so the team was together. And both of their press conferences in unique ways were important and revealing. With Alvin, for example, you can always bank on him to be honest, to share his thoughts about things. He's very philosophical, as you well know, well-read, smart. But you can tell if you read between the lines, and to some extent you don't have to read between lines, just listen to what he's saying, how frustrated he really was last year and how he's you're not going to see, he's not going to be your rah-rah, I'm excited about where we're headed kind of guy, but he is the guy that's going to say, this I like this offense. I like what it may create for me to have a breakout year. It's good to see that. We'll come to Marshawn Lattimore next because that's a unique conversation in and of itself. But it's good to see Alvin back, isn't it?
Yeah, look, he's an important guy on the team. I mean, he's arguably the most high-profile player on the roster, and certainly all the younger running backs look at him. They look to him for leadership. So having him back in the building is important. And you're right. I mean, this is a make or break year. My column that I'm writing, a little sneak preview, is about him and Lattimore and Ramczyk. I mean, they're the three last Mohicans, if you will, from the 2017 draft class. And you could make a point that this might be it for all three of them. I mean, we know Ramczyk's future is uncertain. Kamara's contract is certainly an albatross right now. I think this could be the last year for all three of those guys in that great draft class. And Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore were both offensive, defensive rookies of the year. They've been credentialed multi-time Pro Bowlers. There's just a lot that's kind of they've accomplished in their tenures here. So this is a big year for Alvin especially. And I do think this offense, we're going to find out about Alvin Kamara this year, because I think this offense, it's based in the running game. It's been extremely successful in San Francisco and other markets. And I think it's going to be important for Alvin Kamara to have a big year if he wants to stay in New Orleans.
Well, it's easy to forget that this is his ninth season, right? Ninth season, his contract year.
I think it's his eighth.
Okay,
yeah.
Eighth, and a contract year on top of it. Wow, I mean, it's interesting. You know what I think a lot of people don't appreciate what he does during the offseason. Even some in the media criticize him for not being there in the non-mandatory get-togethers, but that's never been a concern for you because you're super aware of what he does to prepare himself for the season, aren't you?
Yeah, he's one of the last guys you have to worry about. I think it's more about optics, with him not being here, than it is worry about preparation. I mean, he missed a blitz pickup the other day on a play. That's the kind of rust that's going to happen because he's not here in this system. But he's one of the smartest players on the team. High football IQ, very high. So you don't have to worry about Alvin Kamara in that regard. And look, I'm sure it's with the blessing of the team that he's not there. There's certain players you treat differently. I mean, going all the way back to the Bill Parcells, Bill Walsh days, you treat certain players differently, and he's earned that respect from the coaching staff and front office. And
it's not like he hadn't been in the building. He's been in the building. He's met with Kubiak. He's done the kind of things you want him to do. He studied the playbook, and as he pointed out, that's important, but he learns best by being out there doing, and people will quickly forget. As long as he certainly on the videos that I watched of him, he seemed ready. He seemed physically ready to do well. In fact, I recall a long run that he did, and it's impressive to see him in action, isn't it?
Yeah, look, he's a huge part of what they're going to do this year, along with Taysom Hill. I think this is going to be a running-based offense. I think what we're going to see is a lot of 4 yards here, 3 yards here, over the top. That's how they're going to attack teams. They're going to run the ball, short passing game, and then when they get people start cheating up, they've got the athletes in Olave and Rashid Shaheed to hit the big play downfield. They've got to get more explosive plays, but the basis of this offense is going to be the running game, and that's going to be important to see if Kamara is that same guy. I don't know right now if he is or not, because the last 2 years his numbers have been so bad. It's hard to say how much of it is him, how much of it was the scheme, and how much of it was just the offensive line. And I think we're going to find out a lot this year because we got a new scheme, almost rebuild offensive line.
Well, someone in their questioning of him suggested what a lot of people think, and that is that he was a forgotten player last year, that he just kind of got lost in the mix, and that's one of the reasons why he didn't have a great year. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know about that. I mean, there were some times, and we can come back to this, but there were some times where he had an opportunity to break a big run and he couldn't make a guy miss in the open field. Yeah. That is what I'm concerned about. He used to make that guy miss.
That was what made him his balance and his ability to cause the first, second, and third tacklers in some cases to miss him. That's the way he got those extra yards. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan and talk about Marshawn Lattimore and why he's important to this team. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. We'll come to Marshawn Lattimore next. But real quick, I saw Juwan Johnson might have injured his leg, other injuries. What's kind of going on the injury front?
Well, he'd been missing, and everyone was curious as what was going on. It looks like he's got some kind of lower leg injury. I don't know how significant it is, to be honest with you, but obviously now's the time to have it if you're going to have it. Get it mended in this off season, and then hopefully they get him back for camp. But we don't know a status report yet on where that stands.
It's so interesting looking. Okay, on the offensive side of the line of scrimmage, it's about, can these young players, can the rejuvenation of other players, can they become a unit and do well? On the defensive side of the ball, you've got a Chase Young coming back from a neck surgery. You got Peyton Turner, who's been really injury plagued, but could be an incredible player. You got Isaiah Foskey that could have a breakout year. When you think, I guess every team deals with this, but if you look at the Saints, this injury thing, and can these guys come back? We really have never had the opportunity to see Peyton Turner in his true potential with the Saints. If we could come back healthy, it could be a different team, couldn't it?
Well, they got a lot of options there, Ricky. That's what I like. I mean, you're not just counting on one guy like Chase Young, who's had an injury history. You've got Isaiah Foskey, who's looked good so far in camp. You can tell he's motivated after really kind of a redshirt year. And then Peyton Turner, again, I hate to keep using the term make or break, but it's kind of a make or break season for him. He hasn't really had a healthy season at all. And this was a first-round draft pick. They've really gotten little out of it. I was doing this research for that column I was telling you about, the 2017 class. Just listen to this to kind of put in perspective how good that class was and how meager the draft picks have been since then. That group combined, that 7-man class, 13 Pro Bowls and All-Pro honors from that 7-man class. Since then, the Saints have drafted 41 players, and they've got 1 Pro Bowl out of those 41 players.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's where they're at. They haven't hit on anyone. That was Eric McCoy made the Pro Bowl a year or so ago. So, that class has been the core of the team, and they've ridden that class. And one by one, guys have gone to other teams, and they're still left with this core. But Ramczyk, we know, is uncertain. But the defense, with having Lattimore back, he changes everything. He's so good as a cover corner. If you just leave him out on an island, it creates a domino effect among the rest of the secondary. And that's the strength of the team. If they can get any kind of improvement from the pass rush, like you mentioned, this defense, I think, is going to be solid, very solid.
Well, look, let's speaking of Marshawn Lattimore, you have said before that a healthy Marshawn Lattimore is the most talented player on the team. Even in his 8th year, whatever year it is, do you still feel that way?
Oh, no question. With Lattimore, it's not a matter of talent. It's a matter of motivation. It's a matter of consistency. He brings it when he goes in these high-profile matchups against the top receivers, Mike Evanses of the world. But when he gets a lesser matchup, he's not as motivated at this stage of his career, and he has these games that are inexplicable and really inexcusable for how much money they're paying him and his high-profile status. They've challenged him this offseason, and I think he's come back with the right mindset of like, hey, I've got a chip on my shoulder, a little something to prove. So that's a good thing, I think, for the Saints. They need a motivated Marshawn Lattimore because he's an elite player when healthy, and he's had some injury bad luck the last couple of years, And again, he's another one. He needs a big year if he wants to stay in New Orleans because this contract situation is untenable going forward.
Yeah, in the press conference with him, he said, "I'm the number one." You could, and you know what? It's interesting. You always have to listen. You got to look at the body language. Because he's not a guy like Alvin who's going to, philosophically explain his thoughts, etc. He's a guy of a few words, but you can definitely tell in that press conference that he comes with as you pointed out, chip on his shoulder. And a Marshawn Lattimore with a chip on his shoulder, with the kind of talent in that secondary that's around him, and he could inspire them to be better. And man, it could be. You're right. If you could get the defensive line playing well without injury, it could be special.
Yeah. Well, the defense is proven. It's been proven. Now they play a much more difficult schedule this year in terms of elite quarterback play. More high-powered offenses. That's going to be the challenge. I mean, last year, if you remember. They just dodged every top quarterback in the league. It was amazing. They really didn't have to face very many. And when they did face someone like a Matthew Stafford, they kind of got lit up. So they're going to have to play better, and they're going to have to be. I think that's why they drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry. Gives them depth at corner. We haven't seen him on the field yet. He should be ready for training camp, but that's another talented young corner. And in this league, if you don't have the pass rush, you better be good on the back end. I think that's the way the Saints are attacking it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. He's been on the sidelines. I've seen pictures of him. You guys did a great montage of pictures from the OTAs. But what's interesting is that he has not been on the field at all. But his record and his college career is so good that he's always part of the conversation when they're talking about the secondary, and he hasn't played it down for the Saints yet. So that's a pretty bold thing to say about somebody, but they really feel that way about him, don't they?
Yeah, no doubt about it. You can hear the confidence from Dennis Allen and Joe Woods, the coordinator. He's going to play a key role. He's going to compete for the nickel spot. Alontae Taylor, as talented as he is, he got picked on last year. When you look at the numbers, he was one of the most targeted defensive backs in the entire NFL. I think he gave up the most receptions in the slot of any defensive back in the league. When you're going to look at Saints secondary, Ricky, you got Lattimore, Paulson Adebo. Who are you going to go after? You're going to go after Alontae Taylor. So they've got to get better there. And if he doesn't, I think McKinstry is going to get a crack at that starting job. Yeah,
it was interesting. Of course, there's no arguing that our head coach, Dennis Allen, is one of the best defensive minds in the entire NFL. He's a great defensive coach. And if you get a really good offensive coordinator there, so he has to worry less about that and can really focus his attention on the defense, that's a really good scenario to have. But when he's talking about Alontae Taylor specifically, he's quick to point out that this was his first year. He's kind of thrown in there last year, and he still has high confidence in his abilities, doesn't he?
Yeah, I like Alontae Taylor. He's a confident guy, plays with some swagger, great athlete. Man, you got to have a short memory there. That's a tough position. And yeah, he did get thrown into a tough situation last year. If you remember, no one really saw that coming. All of a sudden, they moved on from some veteran defensive backs and thrust him in there, and he had some growing pains. The NFL is a merciless league, man. They're going to attack you, and they did often. But he's got the ability. That's not the issue. It's really kind of a lot of it's mental. But I've got confidence in him. The secondary is not a concern for me at all. It's the strength of the team. I think it's one of the best secondaries in the NFL. That's where the Saints are going to hang their hat defensively.
Yeah, I see that too. Listen, coming back to tight end for a second, if Juwan Johnson has an injury that's going to keep him out for any length of time, we still have some options there, don't we?
Yeah, well, Foster Moreau's bulked up this year. I think he's going to be more of a blocking specialist. He's obviously a guy they can call on. They can move Taysom Hill into that role too. Taysom Hill's played a lot of tight end, still listed as a tight end. So they have options. I like a couple of these young tight ends they've got on the roster. A couple undrafted free agents that are talented that I think can work their way in the mix. There's a lot of young players on this team that I'm starting to like. And I know internally they're high on some of these young players. I'm telling you, Ricky, fans are going to love this kicker from Ireland, Charlie Smith. He was kicking field goals yesterday. He had a little wind at his back, but I'm telling you, they would have been good for 70 yards. It was insane. Just if nothing else, it'll be fun to watch in preseason because this guy's got a leg like I haven't seen before. It's amazing.
So, I mean, that's real competition going on there, isn't it?
Yeah, very much is. Dennis Allen said that. I talked to Blake Grupe about it. He welcomes it. It's a good situation. I can see why they brought Charlie Smith in. I mean, you don't see a leg like that very often. He's got to be obviously accurate and consistent, but man, you don't see a leg like that very often. And I think that's always been a strength under Darren Rizzi. The Saints special teams are elite and have been elite for a while.
Yeah, and man, the new kickoff rules. There's going to be a lot of trial and tribulation and innovation, and Saints are trying some new things too, aren't they?
And I think that's where you see coaching, right? Everyone's thrown into this new kickoff rule. How is the coaching staff going to adapt? How quickly can they adjust to it? And what kind of strategies can they implement? Because every coaching staff's getting this new scheme and system. It's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be completely different. It's going to bring the kickoff back into the game, which we all know has been pretty much eliminated from the game.
It puts a lot more pressure on the kicker, his ability to place the ball. It may change who they put back there to receive the ball even.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think Taysom Hill will be back there at times. Alvin Kamara might be. You're going to have some of your best players on kickoff now that you didn't have before because the injury risk is reduced greatly too, which is a big part of why they did this.
Yeah, is the ball coming out to the 20? Is the ball coming out to the 40? There's a lot to think about, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's why the strategy on how teams attack it, I think, is going to be different from team to team. It's going to make it a little bit more interesting now to watch kickoffs.
Punt returner, who's leading the way on that?
The punt returners right now is a host of guys. I mean, I think Rashid Shaheed will be back there, but they've got a host of guys right now kind of competing.
Well, we're out of time, but Jeff, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to you next week, Ricky.
Have a great week, and we will see you on Monday. Oh, excuse me, we'll see you after this break.